Okay, so thanks for coming along and joining me tonight in this meditation Zoom class on subtle impermanence. So we'll do the body relaxation and the breathing meditation to start with as normal. And I'll give a little talk on why bother with subtle impermanence, what use is that as a meditation practice for us. And then we'll do some meditation on subtle impermanence. What I'll do is I'll weave into the body relaxation and the breathing meditation some practice on subtle impermanence. So I'll just give you a very brief introduction to it at the moment. Basically, everything that we experience changes if we check. This whole room that I'm in now, if we leave it for 1,000 years, excuse me, if we leave it for 1,000 years, it'd be pretty much dust. Maybe the kettle won't, maybe bits of plastic on the switches won't, but most things, sadly, but most things will be dust, including me. If we look at our the atoms that will become dust, they're constantly changing, constantly moving around, constantly changing. Our thoughts are constantly coming and going, we can check that. Our feelings are constantly changing, even though that might seem a bit subtle, might not seem so obvious from moment to moment sometimes. But we know from day to day that they're not the same. We can even know from hour to hour. And when we look, when scientists look in the universe, they tell us they find things that are changing all the time. Black holes even giving out, sucking in, don't they? They sort of drag in all sorts of things. And supernova, suns like ours. I mean, our sun is a perfect example of subtle impermanence. It's constantly on the boil, as it were, constantly changing from one moment to the next. So we can incorporate this into the body relaxation and the breathing meditation. Okay. Okay, so we can start by setting an intention for tonight's class to check openly as to whether this idea of subtle impermanence has any validity, not to just take it as rote because it's been expressed or explained, but to check sincerely. And when we check for things, we're only sure if we've checked everywhere, aren't we? Like if we look for our keys or something, we lose our keys or our purse, our purse or our wallet. Or our car in the supermarket car park. We're only sure we've looked and not found, we're only sure something's not there if we've looked everywhere. So we can do the same exercise with subtle impermanence. This can be our intention to look thoroughly and be open-minded. Now please bring your awareness to the room that you're in. Was this room here in any way, shape or form 50,000 years ago? Were the walls here, the roof, the floor, the paint, the cabling? Were they in this place 50,000 years ago? What will be here in another 10 million years in this place? Will any of these things look like they do now? In 10 million years, the place where you sit. A bit like the H.G. Wells' time machine. We're sitting and we're imagining this space in 10 million years' time. Will anything that's here now be here? Now we can bring our awareness into our body. So notice how this body appears. Really carefully notice what is the experience that suggests there's a body here. Do we feel the body, or do we only feel the sensory experience of the skin, of the tightness of muscles, movement of the air on our face, the temperature in the room, the sound of the breathing? Do we actually experience the body, or do we experience not the body, the sense awarenesses? I'll leave you for a little bit to just gently check around. Does this appearance of the body, is it a sort of a conglomerate of sense experiences? Can you experience the inside of your eye, the middle of your lung? Are you aware of the shape of your skeleton and nervous system, lymphatic system? We can notice that these sensory experiences are changing all the time, subtly. The amount of tension in the muscles, the contact with the chair, the cushion, the floor. All changing all the time. Now we can bring our awareness to our thoughts. This is a really easy one, isn't it? Because we know from experience that thoughts are constantly changing. As a meditator, we know this precisely. It's less obvious to someone who doesn't meditate. We look at it very directly. Watch your thoughts, watch them come, and watch them go. Now we bring our awareness to our feelings. See if you can spot these changing. It's quite subtle sometimes. So we've met now with our body as it appears, our thoughts, and our feelings. Have we met with mind? Have we met with the mind? We use this word mind. We know there's thought, we know there's feeling. We don't know where they come from, we don't know where they go to, but we call this idea that there's something they're arising out of and going back into. We call it mind, but we never ever find any evidence of it. We can infer that it's there due to memory and reasoning, dysfunctional reenactment, and all these things. But in reality, they're just more thoughts and feelings arising. They never ever give us a direct experience of anything that we call mind. So this is a faith object, if we like. We have a faith that there's a mind operating. Or we can suspend belief and not know whether there's mind or not. You know, like a container for these thoughts, a place where they come from and go to. So this body actually is experienced with our eyes closed in meditation as all the senses joined up, and the mind is a label we attach to an idea that encompasses thoughts and feelings. And all these things we've noticed are constantly changing. Now we're going to relax the body. Please bring your awareness to your face. Let your face muscles relax around the eyes, the eyebrows, the lips, the jaw. Let all the tension come out. And now we're going to relax our limbs. Bring your awareness to your left shoulder. Scan down any tightness you find in the arms, the hand, the fingers, the thumb. Let it go. We can see from this that pain is impermanent. We panic when we experience pain, but it's actually impermanent. Now we bring our awareness to our right shoulder. We do the same thing. Scan down for any tension or tightness. Loosen off where we find it. Same now from the left hip all the way down to the floor. And the same from the right hip all the way down. And now we bring our awareness up to our shoulders and our neck. Let them relax. Get your head so it's nicely balanced on your shoulders. And just let your shoulders and neck rest. Now, if we check, we tend to think things are permanent. We think the person we saw yesterday is the same as today. We think the person that we looked in the mirror at is the same one as yesterday. We think the food in our fridge when we open it up is the same as yesterday. We think the garden outside is the same the next morning. We think it's the same moon in the sky and the same sun in the sky. We think that person that hurt us 5 years ago is still walking about. We can imagine black swirling smoke inside of our body cavity, and bound up in it is our tendency to see things not as they are, to see things as solid and permanent, just simply when they're not. And with 3 nice steady deep out breaths, we imagine this black smoke, we visualize it dissipating out of our nostrils into the distance and taking with it this tendency to see phantom objects, things that aren't permanent, that have ceased prior. And after the 3rd nice steady deep out breath, we imagine all this black smoke's gone and our tendency to see permanence where there isn't any. We cling to things, we want things to go away, and these things we cling to and want to go away have already gone. They've already ceased and something else is here. Now as you breathe in, imagine beautiful sparkling golden light coming in through your nostrils. As you breathe in, you imagine this golden light brings clarity, gentleness, care, kindness, a warmth, a gentleness. Allow it to pervade your body and your mind. With the last few golden lighting breaths, we imagine at our heart and in our head there's relaxation, there's warmth and kindness, deep acceptance. Now we're going to bring our awareness to our breath that flows in through the nostrils, down the throat, into the lungs, and then back up and out. Nothing else to do. Totally committed to this simple watching of this process. Breathe deeply and in a relaxed way. Come off alertness. Keep your mind relaxed and observant. Follow the breath. Now we bring our awareness into our nostril linings and we notice the cool and the warm sensations. We notice the subtle impermanence of this experience, constant changing, cool and warm. And finally, we bring our awareness to the very rims of the nostrils. This concentration at this point brings peace. Bringing our mind back to find it when it pops back after wandering away brings peace. The whole process that we're engaged in right now, all of it, creating peace for you. If your mind is feeling dull, just check your posture, check your concentration, effort level. Equally, if your mind feels busier, you're probably trying a little too hard. Just relax your concentration to a touch. For the last minutes, just check more frequently that you're doing it. Really gently just check that you're still with it. Commit really strongly to staying with these sensations at the rims of the nostrils, the cool and the warm. Precisely observing. And before we come out of meditation, we can dedicate this piece to the stillness of our own mind and to the stillness for others. And we can think, how lovely if everyone fell still. How lovely if everyone just fell content and still for a little bit, to rest in it. And then when it feels comfortable, just gently allow your eyes to open. Thank you. hope you enjoyed that. You feel more peaceful. So let's start with gross impermanence and work our way in. Gross impermanence, we can consider things like the changing of the seasons, death, birth. Why do we die? We die because we're born. The cause of death is birth. Gross impermanence. You know, we have a job maybe for 7 years or 10 years or 3 years, and then we don't. We have a different one. That's sort of an example of gross impermanence. The period of time between things starting and stopping. Maybe our bathroom. You know, we redecorate our bathroom, we rip it out and put a new one in. Sort of an example of gross impermanence. Now, we don't act as if there is even gross impermanence, because, you know, human nature to grieve. We grieve because we, on a subconscious level, unconscious level, we're shocked that something's gone or someone's gone. We always knew it was going to go intellectually, but this isn't really in our heart the way what we really believe and the way we act. We can check. We grieve for things that were always going to go. So I always misquote things slightly, but there's a Buddha quote, which is, in a dream, a girl meets a boy. In a dream, a girl meets a boy. She is happy to meet him, but she is sad to know that he is dying. You should know that all phenomena are like this. I think it's a beautiful catch-all, that, for human suffering and the insight that's required to accept it, you know, to accept it. So we're not trying to say that we're wrong or bad for experiencing things as permanent and grieving. They're a human, natural experience. What we can do, though, is look a bit more deeply into the experience and into what's happening, and that can bring peace, which is a bit paradoxical. We can have peace while we're grieving. Because if we're experiencing things as they are, there's a stillness that arises within that grief. It's got wisdom mixed in with it. Anything that is true brings peace, and anything that's false disturbs our mind. No idea why. No idea why. We can just watch that. As meditators, we can see that. As human beings, we can see it. If somebody lies, it disturbs our mind. If we lose trust in someone, or they lose trust in us, it disturbs their mind, it disturbs our mind. It's very disturbing to have a loss of trust in a relationship. If we have trust, if somebody earns our trust or we earn theirs, if we tell the truth, when we tell the truth, it's peaceful, it's nice. Some truths are hard to hear, but that's our relationship with what we've heard. The actual truth saying doesn't disturb. So we can understand things like religious guidance on moral discipline, on the way to live through this. There are things that disturb our mind, and we as functioning adults can decide to investigate and see what does disturb our mind, so that we can have our own moral code. You know, if lying disturbs our mind and we want to be at peace, then we've got a choice to lie less or more. If we steal and it disturbs our mind, that's stealing, then we can check. If talking about other people disturbs our mind, we can check. So may do, may not. So we're looking at what's true. And if we mix our mind with our breath, it relaxes, we become more peaceful. If we mix our mind with the truth of reality, it pacifies our mind, it calms it down, it slows it. So gross impermanence we can check. Is gross impermanence the truth? And then we can look at subtle impermanence, which is the momentary change of everything. I'll come back to the sentence I've just used because the language isn't quite right, but we've got crude language really. So we can check with subtle impermanence. Is it true? Are things always changing on a momentary level? You know, science finds it such. You get a CERN accelerator. Apparently that's the biggest, I don't know if it still is, but I think it's the biggest functioning object in the world, man-made functioning object, mechanism in the world. I heard that, whether it's true or not, I'm not sure. But we've got this massive thing and it spins, accelerates particles to almost the speed of light and smashes them into each other. A bit like a very posh snooker table on a tiny level. And they all scatter, they smash, and all the little bits come out. Well, that's what science thinks anyway, all the little bits come out. Actually what's happening is there's just the next appearance of whatever appears, and subatomic particles, and they whiz off and change and colours and patterns. And if you smash them, something else whizzes off. So there's constant momentary changing on that level. If we look closer, you know, science shows that there is ultimately vibration and energy. And vibration and energy only exist as movement, as momentary change. No momentary change, no vibration, no energy. And people who experience these things spiritually, they experience everything as vibration and energy. You know, so it accords with that. No problem between science and spirituality on these matters, from what I can see. Music's constantly changing, isn't it? Even if somebody holds a note, it's not absolutely, and it's a wave. It's a wave mechanism. If things come into existence, they have to go out of existence. Whatever goes up must come down. If something has a start, it has a finish. We die because we're born. If something is permanent, it can't start. If something is permanent, it cannot come into existence because that would be a change. It wouldn't be permanence. So anything that comes into our experience at all is impermanent. If something is permanent, it can't function. Functioning things have at least two parts. They're a mechanism. One thing on its own doesn't do anything, just is. Put another thing with it, it's a mechanism. It can move, whether that's electronically, physically, chemically, materially, you know, gross mechanical things. So anything that functions is impermanent, it's changing. A bicycle's impermanent, it's changing. Chemical reactions, you know, whatever's in the flask is changing. A bulb is changing, it's not permanent, it's functioning. So we can check in different ways as to whether our reaction to things is true or not. Things feel permanent. Do they change? Do they come into existence? Now, there are lots of different models in Buddhism anyway, for nirvana, enlightenment. You've got these models of eternal bliss. Well, if you're not in bliss now, you can't get permanent bliss. because things are changing. Something can't come into existence that's permanent, so you can never get to it. You can never get to permanent bliss. You get the Buddhist model of bodhisattva, the idea that there's these people who walk on our earth who can do no wrong. If they did wrong before they were a bodhisattva, they can't turn into a permanently, morally perfect being. It's just impossible. You can't get permanence from impermanence. What goes up must come down. This confuses a lot of people when they get into spiritual practices and they see these gurus fall off the perch. Well, they're impermanent. Or we think, I'm not getting anywhere with my practice, I'm not sitting in bliss. Well, maybe you're not going to do. Even if you did, it wouldn't last. The only thing that I've found that is always as it appears, two things. One is emptiness, the unfindability of an object ultimately when it's searched for, and the stillness that watches everything that is here now, experiencing a meditator, a teacher, some speech. Can't explain those things. I think they're beyond. Well, language arises out of them, so it can't explain them. So I think on the deepest level, there's a bit of a paradox here. But on a everyday level, what goes up must come down. And who knows, even that stillness won't be like it tomorrow. We can only know what's here now. So, in terms of the now, it's always now, isn't it? It's always now. So in a way, we can say that's a permanent thing. It's always now. So maybe there's three things. It's always now. Time is a mental idea. It doesn't feel like that. What time is that flipping train? It's late by 5 minutes. You're telling me there's no time. The train's late. What are you on about? It's always now. If we're on a train station waiting for a late train, so we're always waiting now. The content of now changes. That's evident. That's self-evident. It's happening here now. The content of now changes. And the time changes. So depending on where we are in the world, we consider it's a different time. If you're having fun, it seems like the time's whizzes. If you're doing something really boring, it seems like that hour is 4 hours. If we go to the center of the earth, what time is it? Right in the middle of the earth, what time is it right now? It's 8:42 here by my clock. In Australia, presumably it's 8:42 in the morning. Parts of America, it'll be afternoon. What time is it in the middle of the earth? What time is it out in deep space? If our sun is the creator of a 24-hour clock, what time is it on the dark side of the moon? Just ideas. They're just ideas that occur in the now, about the now. So time is impermanent because we create the idea of it. If time is impermanent, it can cease to appear. And we can have meditative experiences where there's no time appearing. It's a very strange experience, but we can have it. People feel like there's timelessness, don't they, sometimes? When you're in nature and there's an absolutely beautiful natural experience, we feel like time stands still. Sometimes it feels like when there's about to be a car crash or some terrible experience, it feels like time slows down. So, Lots of different experiences for checking subtle impermanence. And when that's mixed with our mind, it stills it because we find it to be true. Or we don't, but I generally find these things to be true. Things are impermanent. If we were permanent, we'd never die. Now, we don't recognize that individuals are subtly impermanent. We don't recognize that the person who started this call, this Zoom class, has ceased. We don't recognize that. We think it's still here. Everyone's still here? Everyone's still here? Yeah, we're all still here. Well, we know that. We know the way we use language, but you're not still here. I'm not still here. An object cannot change, because then it's a different object. I won't talk for much longer. We'll do some meditation in a minute, but I'm getting to the end. An object can't change, because then it's a different object. If a tree burns down, it hasn't changed into ash. There's ash and there are trees. We say that's the ash of the tree. We don't say there's the tree. If a tree burnt down and it was just ash and you came running over to someone and said, I've just found a tree. And you run over and there's just a pile of ash, you think, you're nutter. No tree, it's ash. Bit mind-bending, that one, isn't it? Objects can't change, otherwise it's a different object. Maybe they change a bit. Maybe there's something sneaky going on. They change a little bit. Can't. The moment anything at all changes about that object, it's a different object. And yet there is constant change. Impermanence. How can that possibly be the case? How can objects not change and yet there's constant change? All we find. Well, I won't go into it today because we haven't got time, but objects are basically ideas. There aren't really any objects, there are ideas, concepts that we apportion to bits of the appearance of now. Ever-changing appearance of now. We compartmentalize bits of it. Word. In a way, there's a word there because that's the convention. But actually, it's not a word. It's a letter. And actually, it's a shape. Actually, it's a sound. R is a sound. And before a sound, it's a thought. It's a thought sound. Weirdly, in our own accent, in our head, which is lovely. They're just all ideas. There's no edge to anything, ultimately. There's no edge to anything. So we're going to do some meditation on subtle impermanence. If that was all a bit of a brain scramble for you, don't worry about it. These teachings are meant to meet us where we're at. So if you only remember one bit of it, only strikes you, then it's the bit that you were meant to remember. What we're doing is we're starting to chip away at the fixity in our mind. We're starting to chip away at the fixity in our mind. We're starting to try to shatter something that's a falsity that constantly disturbs our mind. And we can only shatter the next bit or weaken the next bit where it's ready to be. So I've said a lot tonight, but hopefully one little bit will strike a chord. Hey, so tonight's second meditation, what we're going to do is we're going to meditate on the subtle impermanence of the whole universe. So if you'd like to get yourself comfortable, so we can check. Let's start with gross impermanence. Can we find anything in our experience that's grossly permanent, that is here all the time? The seasons, the earth, that's unchanging. The seasons, the earth, the sun, the moon, our brain, our blood, our lungs, our phone, our sofa. Is there anything you can find? Remember at the beginning we committed to having a good old thorough look. So imagine your mind expands out, and obviously we can't check everything, but we can do lots of checking for anything that's permanent. If something was permanent, it would be infinitely old. What's the oldest thing that you're aware of? Did it have a creation? The oldest thing I've touched is a 3 billion-year-old space rock in a museum in London. But even that was forged in the heat of the universe somewhere, created out of particles. Are you permanent? Are you grossly impermanent? Are you going to die at some point? So to answer this, we can check, was I born? What starts must cease. What's eternal has no start. Now we can look at subtle impermanence. Is there anything that really, deep down, is unchanging moment to moment? Anything that's not functioning on some level is not functioning, not moving. Does science find anything, any unchangeable object? We thought at one point in history we'd found the undivisible atom. That was found to not be true. We thought space was unmoving, and yet we're told by Einstein and those after him that space is bent by gravitational waves, space-time, or whatever concept you want. The universe, we're told, is expanding. Heaven knows what into, because if the universe means everything, it can't expand into itself. But we're told the universe is expanding. On an absolutely tiny level, everything is vibrating, everything is energy, everything is moving. Everything. Every part of you, me, the Earth, the solar system, the galaxy, the universe, constantly changing. Nothing's the same from one moment to the next. What we're going to do is hold this thing we've found, this experience of the whole universe, subtly impermanent. Every living being in the universe is ceasing to exist and coming into existence in the same moment. Nothing remains a moment later. Hold this view. If your mind wanders away, come back. Regain this view of a whole universe that's constantly in flux. Constantly in flux. So if we think the soul is unchanging, the soul functions, we say that things come from the soul. If it functions, it's got parts, and it's therefore subtly impermanent. Even the idea of heaven is subtly impermanent. It's a garden. It's always a garden for some reason. Heaven's always a garden, an English garden. Apple trees and swings. Gardens are impermanent, constantly changing. Are our dreams permanent? Even our dreams are subtly impermanent. We can include them in the whole universe that we hold in our mind. Our dreams, heaven, soul, the world, the universe. Now, the way we can meditate with this practically is if somebody's upset us, we can notice in our mind, we think, even if we're thinking of angry thoughts about them the next day, we can think, it's not the same person anymore. Now, that might not be very easy, it might not work. So this is not a sort of just a meditation to sit serenely on a meditation cushion. This can be very earthy, crude meditation. We can keep coming back and checking, and at some point during the day or the next day or the next day, we might think, oh yeah, I get it. Yeah, they're not permanent. That person has ceased to exist who annoyed me. This is separate from practical everyday boundary setting and healthy relationships. This is in terms of managing our own anger, recognizing the objects of our anger and how they exist. Very earthy kind of practice. We can get in there when we can. Peeling potatoes or running up some stairs or whatever it might be, our mind can just, when it has the opportunity, can get in and shatter that permanence. Then we're responsible for our feelings, letting them pass through. And they will pass through because they're impermanent. So before we come out of meditation, we can dedicate the wisdom we've created from listening, contemplating, meditating on gross and subtle impermanence to our ever-increasing experience of things as they are, which brings stillness because it's true as we find it. And may everyone else find the same peace too. Then, when it feels comfortable, there's no rush, just gently allow your eyes to open. Remain aware of the constant flux of the universe, including yourself as you open your eyes. Thank you.